Falsely thoughts, race, life's a twisted place. No time to erase. I just keep.
I appreciate everyone being here. Gideon, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm all right. Are you over 18 and do you disagree with anything I have on the board?
Yes, and I disagree with why should I believe in God?
Great. So, why should I believe in a God?
Okay, so there's a few different approaches you can take with it, but there is overwhelming evidence no matter which approach you take. We I'll start with the scientific, okay?
Sure.
So the scientific approach. So there's actually a principle. I think it was called like the column cosmological argument that states like everything must have a beginning. Everything in the beginning, everything has to have a cause, essentially. And I mean, basically, what is the universally accepted theory of the start of the universe is the Big Bang. But no one really knows, like, based on that principle, that had to have a beginning. Would you agree?
No.
So, what would your idea on that be?
Well, the Big Bang is both a misnomer and is misunderstood a lot because the Big Bang actually doesn't imply that was actually the beginning of the universe. It was just an expansion of space time. So it wasn't actually the beginning of the universe. We actually don't know what began the universe, or even if it even had a beginning. But even if it did, that wouldn't imply a God.
Okay, so so we could scrap that argument. Now we can look at the statistical argument. The chances that are currently in place that for the existence of life are approximately 10 to about 120 power, which, in case you didn't know, that's bigger than the number of atoms in the observable universe. So if one factor in that insanely enormous number, a 1 followed by 120 zeros, if one little factor was different, there would be no life. So it's basically statistically impossible for life to exist without a creator.
Okay. What statistical math was used to come up with that number?
Um, let me research it real
And
quick.
what did they compare it to? Because like as far as we see, hey Kate, I appreciate all the gifts. I do appreciate you, Kate. Thank you so much. Because as far as we know, we only have one universe to explore, right?
Yes.
Right. So what did they compare this I'm not proposition. I forgot if it starts with a P. Damn it. I forgot what it starts with. I forgot what the name. But what did they compare this to in order to come up with that number?
Okay, I'm looking at it now. So it says the constants of basic principles of physics and space-time. So gravitational constants, cosmological constants, speed of light, etc., etc.
Right, but that's all within our universe. How did they use that to say that life has only a 1 in 10, 120 times power to exist? What did they compare it to?
But here's the thing, is that the existence of multiple universes is just a theory in itself.
I know that. So what did they compare it to in order to come up with that?
I'm not sure what like you're referring to.
What I'm saying is that when the way that statistics works is that they kind of look at comparisons. If they're saying that life in this universe only had a 1 in 10 to the 120 power to exist, did they compare that to another universe that had more statistics or what?
Okay, I
What did they
guess I
compare
see
it
what you're
to?
saying. So basically, like the all of the possible outcomes that we've observed through scientific experiments and physics and all the observations we made, all of those numbers are finely tuned just for the existence of life. Those numbers are the only supporting factors for the existence of life. There can be no other way.
Yeah, they can.
Uh, could you elaborate?
Because the when it comes to the fine tuning, that's only for life as we know it. If you change some constants around, you can actually have stable universes that can arise with life, and they've actually done this math already. So the fine tuning is just what we see in our universe for life and things to exist in our universe. But that doesn't mean that if you change things, you can't have a stable universe.
I guess I see what you're saying. So, okay, now let's ignore the statistical argument. There's still a lot more arguments. The next one is the Bible. So the Bible, I mean, obviously you probably know this, but collection of writings from various historians and uh, writers over time collected into one single book. So what do you think would disprove the truth of the Bible?
What I think would disprove the Bible, the fact that the Bible gets things wrong.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, it gets things wrong.
Uh,
So that
okay,
shows that
so could you give me an example or two?
of what it got wrong.
Yeah, like a story or anything.
Yeah, during the Exodus of Ramses, when they tell the story in the Bible, I mean, not, I said Exodus Ramses. I'm sorry. For the Exodus story, they say that King Ramses existed at a certain time. But however, when we look at the historical documents, we see that when the Bible says Ramses, when the Bible said the Exodus would have happened, King Ramses was born 200 years after that. So that's obviously wrong. The Exodus couldn't have happened. And when we actually look at the look for evidence of the Exodus actually happening, there is none. So we definitely
So
know that even like Jewish historians would admit that, yeah, Moses probably wasn't real.
okay, so I've actually seen a lot of theological debate about this, which is it's pretty interesting. Is that for a lot of the Old Testament, it actually doesn't really have a true timeline that's like completely associated with each of the books. It's mostly the New Testament because obviously there's a lot more awareness of the original religion that had already been spread and in place. So a lot of the Old Testament actually isn't really bound by a timeline. So I guess I see what you're saying, um, but like in terms of like why would writings lie? Like that's what I'm trying to say.
Why would they lie? They don't necessarily have to lie because Homer didn't necessarily lie when he wrote the Iliad. He was just, making
Well, that's
he
different.
was just trying to explain
That's like a
himself as
story.
right, right. But when Homer wrote the Iliad, he probably didn't even originally write that Zeus interfered in the battle. But like even if he did write that, he probably did think that because it was in his religious culture to believe that if someone pulls off if someone pulls off something that was basically a 1 in 10 chance of happening, he probably thought it was Zeus that interfered. You know what I'm saying? So they don't necessarily have to lie, but they write within their cultural context. And within their cultural context, if Yahweh is this magical, amazing thing, then they're gonna write that volcanoes and earthquakes are Yahweh speaking. And there actually are points in the Bible where Yahweh is like explained as a storm or volcano, which actually falls in line with what the ancient Israelites believe, because the ancient Israelites, under ancient Israelites, Yahweh was a storm and war deity. He was the deity of war and deity of storms. The reason why he became the main deity is because they were constantly at war. So it makes sense that the war deity would then become the main one.
Okay, I guess I see what you're saying, but outside of like comparing it to natural disasters and like natural features of the world, which I understand is obviously false and proven by science, but in terms of like there are countless miracles and factual events that have happened in the Bible that prove the existence of God. Like how
Like
would
what?
you just okay, so for example, let me think, there's a ton. Parting of the Red Sea.
That didn't happen.
Uh, what do you mean?
It didn't happen. It's a story.
It's a story of how the Israelites escaped Egypt, which is a factual event.
No, it's not a factual event. The Israelites never were enslaved in Egypt. They were Semites in Egypt, sure, and probably some of them were Israelites. But the people who built the pyramids weren't just the Israelites. They weren't even slaves. They were paid. Like, because the Egyptians like kept meticulous records. We know the people who built the pyramids were paid, and we know that the Israelites were not in mass in Egypt. They might have been a community of them and stuff like that, but the entire Exodus story is just a foundation myth. Like they were never massively enslaved in Egypt.
Yeah, so I kind of agree with you there, and a lot of the Old Testament books I think are um, vastly what's it called, like swelled up to like, like I see Genesis as very abstract, It's like basically it was written by Moses. Obviously, he didn't observe the events of Genesis, so he was kind of making it up as he's heard it.
Hmm.
But I think I want to point to the main event of Christianity, obviously the resurrection of Jesus Christ, which they have found scientific evidence that it happened.
No, they
So,
haven't.
yes, they have.
No, they haven't.
Okay, so they do have proof of the existence of a human being named Jesus Christ, the most important human to ever walk the earth. And they have proof that he was crucified on a cross and that he ascended into heaven.
No, they don't. What is the evidence that someone flew into the sky? What evidence is there?
No, it wasn't. Oh my gosh.
I mean, because literally all we have is stories that he flew into the sky, but Elisha also flew into the sky, and Muhammad flew into the sky. There's Japanese stories of people flying into the sky too. As a matter of fact, in West Africa, that's what happened to Shango. That's how Shango became the sky deity, because Olodumare blessed him and he flew into the sky. So should we just take all these stories of people flying into the sky seriously, or were they aliens, or what happened there?
Well, I mean, here's the thing about the Bible. As I said earlier, it was written by first-hand observers, first-hand witnesses.
Not the
Uh,
Gospels.
what
We
do
don't
you
even know who
mean?
wrote the. We don't even know who wrote the Gospels.
Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
No, those are just the names that were given to it. We don't know who actually wrote it.
Okay, so then how are they assembled?
They were assembled over like a course of maybe 50 to 100 years by the early church, Council of Nicaea, stuff like that.
So you think that the church like got together to make it up to like
What
add to
they
the story and like complete the
it was
I
an
guess the
oral
saga?
it was an oral tradition for a while, and then someone decided to write it down. But John is probably the one who, well, we know John wrote Revelations, right? John wrote Revelations,
Yes.
but Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John weren't really written by those people. We don't really know who wrote it because they're not autographed. They're not autographed at all, and they're completely anonymous, completely random. Like they're like the Gospel of Mark. It even says that these are stories that we compiled over time from people. We have no idea who the people were that gave those stories.
Okay. What about the apostles? First-hand witnesses, very close friends, close followers of Jesus that who all claimed to see him after he had died.
That's in the Gospel of Matthew, right?
I believe so. It was one of the books. I
Yeah.
believe so.
So the thing is, yeah, sure, that's great. And so what would that tell us? That doesn't really
Tell
tell us
us.
anything. I mean, like, yeah,
What do you
it's
mean?
in a
Like it's not enough proof? Like it's not like stone proof? Is that
right,
what you're trying to say?
because holy books are not evidence; they're just claims.
So why would they claim to see him if they didn't really?
Why would they
Like
claim to
what
see
would
him?
there be their like motive behind that?
Well, they could just be lying, or the second thing is that this is just something that someone wrote from someone else. It could just be complete hearsay. Like, for example, I tell you that I saw Gary wearing a red shirt yesterday and he had a pew pew in his hand, and then I tell you that, and then you go to Elliot and he said, "Hey, Volsi saw Gary with a purple shirt and a bazooka in his hand." And then Elliot goes to James and James says, "Hey, you know, this person told me that this person told me that that person saw that person." Like, that's how it could work. That's how telephone works.
So it's like you think it would be like one or two of them claimed it, and then they all started like it's not really like a placebo effect. What's it called? Like a like false panic or whatever.
Yeah, it could
Like mass
it
hysteria, is that what it's called?
right. No, no, I'm right. That could be mass hysteria, or this event actually never happened. It was just something. It was just an oral event that someone added to the story over time. This happens all the time.
Okay. Another proof for resurrection would be the empty tomb. If uh if he hadn't really resurrected and the body had been stolen by disciples who um uncovered the tomb and found it empty, Romans had complete control over the area at the time. They could have easily recovered it, easily found it, easily stopped Christianity. So why?
Oh well, there could be several reasons why there was an empty tomb. There are grave robbers around the time. We know that. We also know that when it came to the Romans, they usually buried people in mass graves. That they almost never put them in tombs, especially if they were like an enemy of the state, which Jesus was considered, which is probably the main reason why he was executed. So he could have just been buried in a mass grave, and the story of the tomb just developed over time.
Okay, so another fact about it were you probably know that women were commonly known to stumble, like the four women that stumbled upon the empty tomb. If God had intended for people to know that Jesus had resurrected and he had risen, you might have heard this before. Why would God pick women to be the first witnesses? Because women were obviously not seen as equals back then in that time and not reliable sources, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm. Who knows? Who cares?
So you think that, so you think,
Right. Well, what I'm saying is that just because it's written that women saw these things doesn't even make it more believable. As a matter of fact, they would use women because they know at that time that women aren't supposed to be believed. So they say, hey, if we say women saw this, that makes it even stronger. Like, because they know that. So and we know that now. So they actually have more
I
motivation to
guess,
use women.
I guess what I'm trying to say is that if God wanted to spread the word of resurrection, he could have just used men, because men would obviously they would have been taken with more seriousness,
He
and
did,
they would have been more believed. Well, no, but the first
or the
people
writers
to
did.
uncover, well, no, like the first people to uncover tomb. Why would God have women uncover the tomb and then start spreading the news?
Here's the problem. The Bible, I think this is either in Mark or Matthew. It says that they were told to not say what they said, and Matthew ends. I think it's either Matthew or Mark. I'm not sure what it is, but I think Matthew ends. Not Matthew. I think it's Luke or John. That's one of them. I think Luke ends where it says that the women never told anyone else what they saw. So where did the story come from?
I mean, if it was known that they never told anyone, that's obviously a lie. They did tell people.
Oh, so the Bible has a lie in it.
I guess in that aspect of it,
Yeah, you don't see the problem there.
I do. It's just I just feel like there's too much evidence there
But
that
there
is
isn't
like,
any. All this is just says is for the Bible tells me so. That's not evidence. Like
okay, so
Spider-Man #1 tells me that Peter Parker was bitten by a radioactive insect, and now he has the power to lift cars over his head. Should I believe it?
okay, so I guess I see what you're saying is like, yeah, yeah. Okay. Um, so for example, if how do you know the Holocaust really happened then? If you didn't experience it, what we have historical documents, right? From reliable sources.
Yeah, and we can actually go to the tombs. Give
Yeah,
me a
yeah, yeah,
second.
yeah. Like,
Hey,
yeah.
Sheed, go ahead and request to come up because I can't invite you. Yeah, so the we can't use that word on TikTok for some reason.
Oh,
But
really?
what we say, yeah, the HO cost. The reason why we know what happened is, first of all, witnesses, survivors. We know that they were there.
Yeah.
We have pictures. We have documentation. We have the Nazis themselves admitting to it that it happens. We have the documentations from the Nazis themselves telling us
Hmm.
what they did. We can go to Auschwitz right now. We have
Yeah. Okay.
written
Agreed.
historical records, et
Okay.
cetera, et
I'm
cetera.
not trying to like disprove that. I'm just trying to. I'm gonna prove a point. So now, how do we know that the American Revolution happened?
Documents, and we have pictures as well.
Yep. Okay. So what about before there were photographs? What would we have mainly relied upon? Oral
We,
tradition and documents, right?
documents we will rely on the archaeological evidence and
Hmm.
like language data, stuff like that.
Yeah. 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 Okay. So why don't you think we should trust a document that was a primary source back then, eyewitness accounts? Like, how are we supposed to trust any historical document if we can't trust that it was a primary source. Do you get what I'm
Because
saying?
most historical documents also have archaeological data uh, that can we can compare it to, like historical relics, and not only that, like historians almost always take supernatural stories as like unserious because there's no way to test that. Like for example, I'm going to bring it up again. The Iliad. The Iliad says Zeus and Hera were, all throughout the battle. Does Zeus do we should we take Zeus and Hera as existing?
No, obviously not.
Right, exactly. So if we're not going to take that serious, why should we take anything else seriously? Why should we take
Well,
any other supernatural claim seriously if we're not going to take all of them seriously?
okay, I see what you're saying. Um, so where do you draw the line then? Like,
I usually draw the line is that if it has no like not just contemporary sources but like secondary sources, archaeological data, etc., then there's no reason to take it seriously. Like there's some tangential archaeological data that Jesus made access because we know Paul was a real person and Paul wrote that he met James, the brother of Jesus. So like fictional characters just don't have brothers walking around meeting real people. You know what I'm saying? So we just take it as a given that Jesus probably was a historical person, even if we don't have a lot of historical records at that time for him existing, which is why some historians say that he probably didn't exist at all. But we just can take it as given as he probably did, right? But like, so when it comes to the supernatural claims, how do we show that actually real? Like, what like archaeological data do we have that Jesus walked on water? We don't have any of that. We just have a story from a book. Why should we take that seriously? Because like I said, if we're gonna take that seriously, we should also take like Orochimaru and Lady Tsunade poked the samurai sword in the sky and flooded the earth. We don't take Shintoism seriously.
okay, yeah, I see that. Like so you think it's like it's too far-fetched to be real, and there's not enough backing.
Right. There's just not enough backing for it. Now, if someone has proof of the supernatural, sure. Like we'll take a look at it. That'll be great. But until then, no one has done that yet. Give me a second. Hey, Walk with Timothy. You've been crashing out in the comments, and I've already invited you up. If you're not gonna come on up and actually discuss this with me, just shut the fuck up and go away. Because I hate like people just yapping in the comments. I'm really losing my patience with y'all. I tell y'all all the time, come on up and actually discuss it with me instead of being a little complaining bitch and complaining in the comments. Like I'm losing my patience, y'all. If you're just gonna yap in the comments, then my mod is gonna mute you for the entire live. If you actually want to discuss it with me, don't just yap and complain in the comments. Actually, come on up. My bad. I'm Gideon. Go ahead.
You're good. So what were we talking about? Oh, like
You're saying that
reliability.
it's yeah, reliability.
Okay, um, so you
Uh,
think,
and give me a second. Bad Moth of Sand. I'm gonna bring you right up after I talk to Gideon. Give me about. We have about 3 more minutes, Gideon, and then I'm
okay,
move to Bad Moth. Okay, but go ahead.
okay, okay, so in a lot of fairy tale stories that were made up that might have been widely believed at the time, a lot of them don't exist in real places, right? Like, obviously, in a lot of Greek myths, there's uh, the underworld, for example. Like, okay, do you think the underworld really exists?
No.
Yeah. So, I think the difference between that and something like uh, places in the Bible, the place in the Bible actually exists. Sea of Galilee, Jordan River, et cetera, et cetera. You can go on and on.
Hmm.
Like, so why would they make up stories in these real places? I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Well, um, in Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, they actually go to London. Is Hogwarts a real place?
No, not yeah.
Right. So some them mentioning real places doesn't make the actual story real.
I guess so. I guess I'm just trying to say that it adds another level of sort of like a certification.
It doesn't.
I mean, but if people have witnessed, like it's not just some people too, it's hundreds, thousands of people that witness these events
They
in real
didn't.
places that they live in.
But they didn't.
Okay, what about
Like for
oh,
example, let me give you a perfect example. Right in Matthew, it said that. Hold on, give me a second. All right, Timothy, I'm gonna go ahead and mute you because like I said before, don't just yap in the comments. If you're not gonna come on up, then I don't want to hear you yapping. I don't want to see you yapping. Okay, actually, come on up. All right. So when it comes to like for example, let me give you an example. Like in Matthew, right? In Matthew, it says that stones were when Jesus resurrected, there was an earthquake, stones were overturned, and the prophets and dead people rose up from their graves and started walking the streets. Right? Matthew is the only place where we see this. It doesn't say it in any of the other gospels. And what's worse, there's no historical record of that ever happening. Like not even memoirs from people written. Like for example, we know that people wrote down their memoirs back then, right? There's no record of this ever happening anywhere. We see no type of evidence for this. And we know that people wrote significant events back then because the eruption of Pompeii, that was written by someone from his room. You see what I'm saying? Like someone actually saw that happen. But like when it comes to people actually getting up and walking around like this is a zombie apocalypse, no one wrote this down. So it's like that shows right there that there's something wrong here, especially when none of the other gospels mention it.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Um, yeah, that's a fair point to include too. I think that there are some parts of the Bible that are a little, like, okay, is this really true? It's probably like more of the significance of something that happened that, like a popular theory of like the Bible just being a book of fables, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I want to talk about Paul, who, I mean, he was like widely known as being a persecutor of Christians back in ancient Rome.
Mm-hmm.
And after he saw the risen Christ, he converted. Why? Why do you think that was?
He had a delusion.
So you think that a man who hated persecuted Christians all his life would change around his ideology out of delusion?
Yeah, because people change ideologies out of all the time. Some people have delusions. Some people regret their past. Look at Robert Byrd. Robert Byrd was a member of the KKK, and then he became a liberal Democrat. Now, I never trusted him, but still, that's a story right there. That happens all the time.
Okay, but like such a sudden change, like from completely despising Christians, persecuting them, like one of the like a terrible person, and then to all of a sudden, like if you claimed that you saw Jesus and you told that to other persecutors, like what would they think? Like I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but like okay, let's move on.
Well, no, I
We
understand
saw
exactly what
times.
you're trying to say. Why did he
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
change and convert? Yeah, I get it, but there's a lot of reasons why they would do that. It doesn't necessarily have to make it true.
Okay. Do we still have time? I have a couple other points.
We have about 2 more minutes, and I gotta move on because we've been up for maybe
Yeah.
the last like 20 minutes. Richard Schaefer, go ahead and request, and I'll bring you up next. All right. But yeah, let's just close on out, and you can come on next. I do this every Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. So if you want to come up
All right,
next
that sounds
Tuesday, then you
great.
can
Yeah.
come on up.
Okay.
All right.
Another thing I want to talk about is why would so many people, not just current day, but
Mhm.
throughout the last 2 millennia, fall for something that would be a lie?
Um. Well, when it comes to my people specifically, it was just beat into them.
Okay, but I'm talking about like let's talk about like ancient Europe,
Hmm.
like Dark Ages Europe.
Hmm.
Why would so many people throughout Europe, the entire continent, to be more specific, fall for a lie?
Yeah, because it's a very it's one of those very things. It's one of the things that's very very enticing, and not only that, you're talking about a time where people were very very superstitious. Yeah, I mean, like we're talking about a time where people still believe that there was a person in the sky striking down lightning bolts. So yeah, they would probably believe that some guy over in ancient Palestine rose from the dead.
Okay, so then what about now?
Now it's just
How
a
would you
cult. It's
explain
now
now?
now it's just baked into the culture, and people don't question it because we're raised not to question it. Like I was raised not to question it.
Okay,
Whenever
yeah,
I had
I
questions
can see
about
that.
it,
That's pretty fair.
right?
Yeah, I was also raised in Christianity, so obviously I believe the way I do.
Mhm.
Um, Also, Christianity grew rapidly, had its roots mostly in Jerusalem, which is also the place where Jesus was crucified. If the resurrection weren't real, wouldn't that have been easy to disprove?
No, not really, because it's a something that's unfalsifiable. Like for example, if I told you, hey, I have $10 million, but it's buried under the ice shelves of Europa, how can you prove me wrong?
Okay, I don't think that's a good analogy. I get where you're coming from, but
Hmm.
um, I think a better comparison would be like, I don't even know. But okay, my last point, and then we can move on to the next person. It's been great talking to you, by the way. I
Hmm.
really enjoyed this.
Yeah, sure.
Um, Within the 300 years from the crucifixion, Christianity spread like wildfire across the Roman Empire, despite persecution and outright like death sentences if you were caught practicing.
Hmm.
Why? Why would you take the risk if it was a lie?
Yeah. I can't personally speak to those people, but I can say that people take risks like that all the time. Like, look at the People's Church of Jim Jones. He convinced 900 people to self delete. I mean, people
Yeah.
can be
So
convincing.
so do you believe it was like wildfire, like after it spread from one person to the next, and then like a combination of that and like superstition? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. Like it was kind of like a meme that got out of control. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
if a
yeah.
group of people believe something, then they can spread it to everybody else. It could very folks can be very very convincing, and not only that, like I said, we're talking about a very very superstitious time. You know what I mean? In
Hmm.
humanity. So if it wasn't Jesus, it would have been Muhammad. If it wasn't Muhammad, it would have been Krishna. If it wasn't Krishna, it would have been Buddhism or Shintoism. Or like if none of that ever happened, and let's say the reverse happened, and Africa was the one that colonized everybody, we would all be worshiping Olodumare. You know,
So you think it's just like a matter of influence?
matter of influence. Yeah,
Okay. All right. Well, I don't want to take away from someone else's time, but it's been great to talk to you. I'd love to do this again.
not a
Hey,
problem.
man,
I do
Gideon,
these
if you
every
want to
Tuesday,
stay,
Wednesday, Thursday.
Tuesday,
I was
Wednesday,
gonna
Thursday.
say,
Got it.
sorry. Yeah, I was gonna say if you want to stay, I was gonna have a discussion about religion too.